All of it is fraud. All of it. I mean, it's just, I've committed probably close to 50,000 hours worth of research time. So I can say unequivocally that I've spent decades, 2 decades of my life on this topic, probably full time, I would say. The only times I'm not talking about it or researching about it is the 2 days a week I'm still in the office seeing patients. And so from that, I can unequivocally say vaccines have never been proven to be safe. They do not keep you from getting sick. They definitely cause harm. So when COVID started, it was just kind of a natural extension to me to look at the virus that was ostensibly supposed to be causing this infection. And what about these shots, which are not vaccines, and that they definitely do cause harm because they're genetic modification technologies, which I know you talk about that all the time. So I've been doing this for a long time. And so to go into talking about what's happening with COVID shots, testing, the myth of the mask, the nonsense of the social distancing. I've talked about it a lot. I think, first of all, we need to stop using the word vaccine and vaccinated.
Okay.
In fact, because they are not. Vaccines, by definition, when you think about a flu shot or MMR or chickenpox or something like that, they are intended to stop the spread of the virus and the infection. They are intended to stop the spread. They're intended to lower the incidence rate. They're intended to stop hospitalizations, and they're definitely intended to stop deaths. That's the normal vaccines, as what we call them. And by definition, that's how they're supposed to work. These are genetic modification technologies. The messenger RNA has never been used in human beings before. It has only been issued under emergency use authorization, and they do not do any of the things I just described. They don't keep you from getting sick. They don't stop the transmission. They do not lower the hospitalization rate. In fact, we now know that over 70% of people by the DoD's by the Department of Defense own information, over 70% of people who are hospitalized are fully vaccinated, which is defined as 2 shots and a booster, and they definitely cause harm. We know there's over 1 million reported adverse events to VAERS, over 22,000 deaths reported to VAERS, and those numbers are probably 1% of actuality. The original developer of the PCR test, Kary Mullis, who actually got the Nobel Prize for that, I believe, is in the early 90s, said the PCR test was never, ever, 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 ever intended to be used for clinical diagnostic as a clinical diagnostic tool. So, here was the actually inventor of the technology said, you can't use it as a diagnostic tool, because what it does is it finds little particles. I heard Dr. Ryan Cole explain yesterday on that roundtable, and I love the way he explained it. He said, what you're looking for that can cause infection, let's say it's a bicycle. You needed to find the whole bicycle in order for it to cause infection and to make you sick. What a PCR test does is it finds the handlebar or the tire or the spoke or the seat, and it has to magnify it enough time. What's called cycle threshold. It has to cycle it over and over and over again enough to see whether or not that is the whole bicycle, or if all we really found was the seat. So if all you really found was the seat, and they would, positive test, found the seat, and that's what the PCR actually did. And now we have a case-demic because we keep testing healthy, asymptomatic people that do not spread the virus, that are not contagious, and we've used the fear factor to make people get Q-tips crammed up their nose to find a piece of virus that you may have been exposed to sometime in your life. Biosensors and all of the technology, the lipid nanotechnology, the graphene oxide, the graphene hydroxide, all of the different particles that are now being discovered in the shots themselves can be modified and manipulated by an external source. The external source can be a frequency, and it can be this CRISPR technology, which can then modify and change your genes. So depending on which gene they're talking about, depending on which organ they're talking about, we can see a rampant increase in heart disease, rampant increase in infertility, rampant increase in all kinds of neurological problems. This is not a vaccine for which they, if you're going to vaccinate your children, they give them a series of 3 shots. They give them one, they say, to prime them, the second one to lock it in, and the third to give them a long-lasting high antibody value. That does not apply to COVID shots. So when they started rolling them out and they go, yeah, I think we'll give 3. That sounds good. There was no science, no long-term studies, no even animal investigations to know if they needed 1, 2, 3, or 20. And, now they're talking about perhaps giving these shots quarterly, more than, I've heard from very reliable sources that we're going to be looking at least 7 boosters. There'll be now we have Delta, then Omicron, we're going to have Lambda, Zeta, whatever like that, just to keep the fear factor going, because each one of these shots, Dave, each one has been shown to permanently and irreversibly damage your immune system, to shut down your toll-like receptors, which is your innate immune system, to increase the amount of cancer in society because it shuts down the enzymes that repair cells that have been damaged that would turn into cancer. It causes cardiovascular disease, neurological complications, autoimmune problems. The list is endless. The third booster has now, with information that just came out of Germany and out of the UK in the last 2 weeks, has shown that the third one is the one that takes down your immune system permanently so that it makes you susceptible to any other type of virus and bacteria or other pathogen that's in your immune system. Remember, the stated goal by these people is depopulation of the planet, to make people chronically sick, and or to turn them into transhumans. So the boosters are not like normal immunological, soundly based vaccinations. These are not vaccines. They're bioweapons. These are genetic modification technologies. And we inject them into the body, and whether it's Pfizer or Moderna, which injects messenger RNA, or we use AstraZeneca in Europe, or the J&J shot here in the US, which is double-stranded DNA that's injected by a little different way. All of these shots, including there's about 109 in the developmental pipeline, the last time I looked a couple of weeks ago, all roads lead to the development of a spike protein. And what that spike protein can do, there's 40 mechanisms of injury that I've identified of how these shots can make you sick or kill you. I published the first 20 in May of this year, May of 2021. And the second 40 in July of 2021. And they're both available. The ebooks are available on the website at drtenpenny.com. And now we start seeing more and more and more every single day, more proof of what I discovered then is coming out. And so what he's talking about is that when you inject this genetic modification technology, it causes what's called a quantum entanglement. Biosensors and all of the technology, the lipid nanotechnology, the graphene oxide, the graphene hydroxide, all of the different particles that they're now being discovered in the shots themselves can be modified and manipulated by an external source. The external source can be a frequency, and it can be this CRISPR technology, which can then modify and change your genes. So depending on which gene they're talking about, depending on which organ they're talking about, we can see a rampant increase in heart disease, rampant increase in infertility, rampant increase in all kinds of neurological problems. Listening to this yesterday and finding all of these things that they've been talking about, and what's inside of the shots, this quantum technology or this quantum entanglement, the whole purpose, the end game of all of this, Dave, the end game is injecting this modification technology and all of the nanoparticle stuff to turn us into transhumans. All of these people that are doing this are rabid transhumanists, and they want us to either be chronically sick or dead, or the ones that are left will be transhumans that will be able to be hooked up through the quantum entanglement to some of the most intense servers in the world, like the D matrix, and which it puts the Google servers to shame, and that we will become transhumans and transhumanoid. Their intent is to give each one of us our individual IP address, that we will be a node and an avatar with a replication of us to eliminate God out of our lives, to take God out of our genes, and we can be controlled externally by them.